A neighbor knocked on the door asking for sugar and ended up sweetening the life of a single father. What started as a simple favor turned into something unexpected. Hearts connected, and their lives changed forever. A story of love and hope that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. It was 3:45 in the morning when Jack Thompson woke up startled by the sharp and persistent cries of his daughter. The two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, with its creaky wooden floors under bare feet, echoed the despair of Lily, just 2 years old, who refused to go back to sleep. The 35-year-old civil engineer ran his hands through his messy brown hair, feeling the weight of the last 14 hours spent at the construction site of the new business complex by the East River. "Calm down, my love, Daddy is here," he murmured with a hoarse, sleepy voice, walking over to the crib where Lily stretched her chubby little arms in his direction. Her light brown eyes, a maternal inheritance, sparkled with tears as she sobbed incomprehensible words. Jack picked her up, feeling the warmth of her tiny body against the cold air coming through the slightly ajar window of the apartment. The nighttime routine was already automated in his calculating mind. Check the diaper, prepare the bottle, walk through the minimalist living room, dominated only by a grey sofa, a television, and stacks of architectural plans on the coffee table. The apartment reflected his organized personality to the point of obsession. Every object had its specific place, every bill was meticulously paid, every decision was carefully planned. Everything except for single parenthood, which had arrived like a hurricane in his structured life. While warming the milk in the open kitchen, Jack looked through the window at the lights still on in other apartments in the building. Brooklyn never completely slept, and he wondered how many other single parents were facing similar sleepless nights. There was a cruel irony in building homes for other families during the day while struggling to keep his own home running at night. Lily had stopped crying but remained restless in his arms, curiously watching her father's precise movements. Jack tested the milk's temperature on his wrist. Not too hot, not too cold, just as he had learned in the desperate early months after Emily left for Paris in pursuit of artistic dreams that, according to her, their marriage had stifled. Just as he began to give her the bottle, the doorbell rang. Jack froze. Who could it be at this hour? His analytical mind immediately considered the possibilities: an emergency in the building, a mistake, or something more sinister. Distrust was natural for someone who had learned not to depend on anyone but himself. With Lily still in his arms, he approached the reinforced door and peered through the peephole. On the other side was a woman he had noticed a few times in the elevator, but with whom he had never exchanged more than a polite nod. She held a white ceramic mug in her hands and smiled almost apologetically. Even through the distorted lens of the peephole, Jack could see something different about her, a light that contrasted with the dimly lit hallway of the third floor. "Excuse me," she said when he finally opened the door, keeping it partially closed for precaution. "I know it's very late, but I'm your new neighbor from 302. My name is Mariana Smith, and I'm in a bit of an embarrassing situation here." Her voice had a soft Texan accent, the kind that stretches the vowels and makes any sentence sound more welcoming. Jack noticed she wore a navy blue robe over a simple t-shirt, and her dark brown hair was loose, falling in natural waves over her shoulders. There was something genuinely maternal in her posture, as if she were used to dealing with unexpected situations. "Look, I know it seems crazy to ask this from a stranger at this hour, but would you happen to have a little sugar to lend me? I promise to return it tomorrow. Later today," Mariana continued, raising the mug as evidence of her need. "It's just that my son Ethan has a slight fever, and I thought of making cornbread to cheer him up when he wakes up. It was his favorite recipe back in Texas." Jack hesitated for a moment, His natural tendency was to avoid unnecessary involvement with neighbors, preferring to keep relationships cordial but superficial. However, there was something in the sincerity of that woman that disarmed his usual defenses. Perhaps it was the fact that she was also a single mother, facing her own nighttime battles. "Sure, no problem," he replied, opening the door a bit more. "Lily here is a bit restless tonight too. Just wait a moment." He noticed how Mariana's eyes lit up upon seeing the child, who had stopped drinking the bottle to watch the stranger with interest. Lily wasn't usually receptive to strangers, but something about that woman's presence calmed her. "What a cutie," Mariana said, and her voice automatically took on the gentle tone that all mothers develop. "How old is she?" 2 years and 3 months, Jack replied, surprised at himself for sharing personal information with a stranger. "And your son?" "Ethan is 8. We've only been here for 2 weeks, still adjusting. The move from Austin to New York wasn't exactly easy for him." As Jack went to the kitchen to fetch the sugar, leaving the door ajar, he caught a scent coming from Mariana's apartment, a captivating mix of nutmeg, freshly brewed coffee, and something more subtle he couldn't identify. Jasmine, perhaps. It was a smell of home, of affectionate memories, completely different from the sterile environment he had created for himself. "What do you do for a living?" Mariana asked when he returned with a small jar of granulated sugar. "Civil engineering, mostly. Commercial building construction," he replied, handing over the sugar and noticing how her fingers briefly brushed against his during the exchange. There were small calluses on her hands, a sign of manual labor. "And you?" "I'm an educator. I got a position at a public school nearby, at Harmony School. The salary isn't great, but it's a start." She spoke without bitterness, just as someone stating a fact. "Thank you so much for the sugar. I promise not to make this a habit." "No problem, neighbors are for that." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, broken only by the soft breathing of Lily, who had fallen asleep in her father's arms. Jack realized it had been a long time since he had talked to another adult about something other than work or his daughter's basic needs. "Well, I don't want to take up more of your time," said Sarah, taking a step back. "Good luck with the little one, and thanks again." "Good luck with the cake, and I hope Ethan gets better soon." When the door closed, Jack stood still for a few minutes, still processing the unexpected encounter. There was something about Sarah Johnson that had broken, even if momentarily, the mechanical routine of his existence. Perhaps it was the naturalness with which she had handled the strange situation of asking a neighbor for sugar in the early morning. Or maybe it was the fact that she had shown genuine concern for Lily, without asking the invasive questions that most people did about where the child's mother was. Carrying Lily back to the bedroom, Jack noticed that the apartment suddenly felt quieter and emptier than usual. The scent of jasmine still lightly floated in the air, reminding him that there was life and human warmth on the other side of the wall that separated their apartments. As he placed his daughter in the crib and returned to his own bed, Jack couldn't help but think about the sincerity in Sarah's gaze and the way she spoke about her son with such protective affection. He recognized something familiar in her, the silent determination of someone who learns to be strong, because there is no alternative. For the first time in many months, Jack Thompson fell asleep, thinking about something other than spreadsheets, delivery schedules, or the endless responsibilities of raising a child alone. He thought about sugar, nutmeg, and the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, loneliness was not a permanent and inevitable state in his overly organized life. The following 14 days brought a subtle change to Jack's morning routine. Without consciously admitting it, he began to leave home a few minutes earlier, hoping to run into Sarah in the elevator on the way to the garage. The 8-story building in Brooklyn had only 2 elevators, and the chances of a casual encounter were relatively high if someone knew how to calculate the right timings. On the first Monday of March, while waiting for the elevator with Lily in the stroller, Jack heard the door of apartment 302 open. Sarah appeared in the hallway, carrying a navy blue backpack and holding the hand of a skinny boy with brown hair and big eyes that observed everything around him with a mix of curiosity and shyness. "Good morning, Jack," Sarah greeted with a genuine smile. She wore a simple white blouse, jeans, and black flats, the universal uniform of public school teachers. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, but a few stubborn strands escaped, framing her face naturally. "Good morning. This must be Ethan," Jack replied, crouching down to be at the boy's height. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Jack, your mom's neighbor. How are you feeling?" Ethan looked at his mother for approval before responding quietly, "Better, thank you. The cornbread was really good." "Glad to hear that," Jack said, noticing how the boy slightly hid behind his mother. There was something familiar about that shyness. He himself had been a reserved child, preferring books and technical drawings to the company of other kids. The elevator arrived with its characteristic metallic noise, and they all entered together. The small space filled with the soft scent of Sarah, mixed with the smell of children's soap emanating from Ethan. Lily, in the stroller, watched the boy with interest, babbling incomprehensible sounds that sounded like attempts at communication. "Lily is trying to talk to you, Ethan," Sarah observed with amusement. "She's very smart for her age." "Sometimes I think she understands much more than she can express," Jack admitted, surprising himself with his own openness. "It's frustrating not being able to really talk to her about things. I remember that phase with Ethan. It seems like they have this whole complex inner world, but they just don't have the words to share," Sarah said, her voice carrying a maternal nostalgia. "But it will pass quicker than you think. Soon she'll be chattering away." The elevator stopped at the ground floor, and they all walked together to the main door of the building. Outside, Brooklyn was waking up with its characteristic rhythm, the noise of traffic on Teodoro Sampaio Street, the aroma of coffee wafting from nearby bakeries, and the morning rush of people heading to work. "Is Ethan's school far from here?" Jack asked, as he unlocked his black Civic, a 2018 model that he kept impeccably clean and organized. "About 20 minutes by bus, Harmony School on Harmony Street. It's not far, but we're still getting used to the public transport in New York," Sarah replied, adjusting Ethan's backpack on his back. "In Austin, everything was closer, more familiar." "I can imagine how difficult it must be to adapt to a new city," Jack said, and there was a genuine sincerity in his voice that surprised even him. "If you need anything at all, you can count on me. I've lived here for 5 years. I know the area well." Sarah looked at him with a grateful expression that went beyond words. "Thank you, Jack, really. It's not every day that we find neighbors willing to help." "Especially neighbors who lend sugar at midnight," joked Ethan, speaking for the first time spontaneously, and his comment drew smiles from the 3 adults. "Exactly. Emergency sugar is serious business," agreed Jack, winking at the boy. "By the way, how was school yesterday? Are you liking your new classmates?" Ethan's smile faded slightly, and he looked down at his feet. "It's different. The kids here talk a bit too fast, and I don't understand some slang." Sarah gently ran her hand through her son's hair. "It's just a matter of time, my love. You've always been good at making friends." Jack noticed the disguised concern in Sarah's voice and felt a pang of empathy. As an engineer, he was used to solving concrete problems, but emotional issues of child adaptation were outside his area of expertise. Still, something in him wanted to help. "You know, Ethan, when I was your age, I moved from Austin to New York with my parents. I also found everything very confusing at first," Jack said, crouching down again to be at the boy's level. What helped me was thinking of New York as a big puzzle. Every day you discover a new piece, and little by little, you put the whole picture together. Ethan looked up, showing interest for the first time. Do you like puzzles? I love them. It's actually part of my job. Building a building is like putting together a giant puzzle where each piece has to fit perfectly. That's cool. I also like puzzles. I have a 1,000-piece dinosaur one, but I still haven't finished it because some pieces got lost in the move. Wow. Dinosaurs are fascinating. Do you have a favorite? Triceratops, because of the horns and the shield on its head. My mum says they were herbivores, but still no one messed with them. Jack smiled, recognizing the child's passion for specific details. Smart choice. Sometimes the best defense is being well prepared, right? Sarah watched the interaction between the two with a look of surprise and something that could be described as relief. It was rare to see Ethan open up so quickly to strangers, especially adult men. The boy had developed a natural distrust after difficult episodes with his biological father. In Austin. Well, we need to go, Sarah said, checking the time on her phone. The bus won't wait, and I can't be late in my second month of work. Of course. Have a good day at school, Ethan, and remember the puzzle story, okay? I'll remember. Bye, Jack. Bye, Lily. As mother and son headed to the bus stop on the corner, Jack remained by the car, watching them leave. Lily was babbling something in her stroller, as if she were also saying goodbye to her new friends. What do you think of our new neighbor, Lily? Jack asked. His daughter, who responded with a toothless smile and enthusiastic clapping. During the drive to the construction site, Jack found himself thinking about the morning conversation more than he should have. There was something refreshing about Sarah's naturalness, the way she handled both maternal and professional responsibilities without losing her tenderness. And Ethan, despite his initial shyness, showed a curious intelligence that awakened in Jack a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. Arriving at the construction office while reviewing the plans for the new project on the East River, Jack was surprised to find himself mentally planning ways to help Ethan adapt better to the city. Maybe he could lend some books about New York or show interesting places in Brooklyn that the boy could explore with his mother on weekends. The idea slightly unsettled him. Jack had always avoided entanglements that could complicate his organized routine or create expectations he couldn't meet. Since Emily's departure, he had built a functional life based on total independence and absolute control over the variables. Allowing neighbors, especially neighbors with their own problems and vulnerabilities, into that equation could be an unnecessary complication. But when he got home that night and saw the lights, on in apartment 302, Jack couldn't help but smile a small, involuntary smile. For the first time in a long time, the idea of complications didn't seem completely threatening. After all, some complications might be worth it. March arrived with the typical torrential rains of New York summer, turning the streets of Brooklyn into temporary rivers. In the third week of the month, a particularly violent storm hit the city overnight, accompanied by winds that made the apartment windows vibrate like out-of-tune musical instruments. Jack woke up at 2 a.m. to the deafening sound of rain pounding against the glass of his bedroom. Lily, miraculously, continued to sleep soundly in her crib, lulled by the rhythmic sound of the water. He got up to check if all the windows were securely closed when he heard 3 discreet knocks on his door. This time, he didn't hesitate before opening. On the other side was Sarah, holding Ethan's hand. The boy was wearing dinosaur pajamas and carrying a worn stuffed bear. They both looked worried and slightly wet. "Jack, I'm sorry to bother you again, but we had a little problem," Sarah said, her voice carrying a tension he hadn't noticed before. "The heater in our apartment broke with the rain, and Ethan is shivering from the cold. Do you know of any place that fixes these things at night?" Jack immediately opened the door wider, gesturing for them to come in. "Don't be silly, come in. No one is going to be able to fix that at night, and with this rain, it's dangerous to even go outside." "I don't want to impose," Sarah began, but was interrupted by Ethan, who sneezed twice in a row. "You two are staying here tonight," Jack declared, with the authority of someone who wouldn't accept discussion. "I have a sofa bed in the living room, and I can make you some hot tea." The apartment of Jack, always organized and functional, suddenly felt more welcoming with the presence of the two visitors. He quickly prepared the sofa bed with clean sheets that smelled of fabric softener, while Sarah helped Ethan warm up with a blanket she had brought from her own apartment. "Do you have sugar for the tea?" Sarah joked when Jack returned from the kitchen with 2 steaming mugs. "This time I'm sure I do," he replied, and they both smiled, recalling their first meeting a few weeks earlier. Ethan, now warmer and more comfortable, curiously observed Jack's apartment. The walls were decorated with framed architectural plans and some photos of projects he had supervised. A small bookshelf contained technical books on civil engineering, mixed with a few novels he had never admitted to reading. "Wow, these designs are cool," exclaimed Ethan, moving closer to a particularly detailed floor plan. "Is it for your house?" "No, it's for a commercial building I'm constructing by the East River. It has 12 floors and will have offices for tech companies," Jack explained, noticing the boy's genuine interest. "Want to see how it works?" Jack grabbed a sheet of paper and began to sketch a simple diagram, explaining how the columns supported the weight of the structure and how the electrical system was distributed across the floors. Ethan absorbed every piece of information with the thirst for knowledge characteristic of smart kids. "It's like a giant puzzle, just like you said," Ethan said, connecting the explanation to their earlier conversation in the elevator. "Exactly! And do you know what the most important part of any construction is?" Ethan thought for a moment. "The foundations." "Very good. The foundation. If it's not solid, it doesn't matter how beautiful the rest of the building is. It will have problems." Sarah watched the interaction between the two while sipping her tea, feeling a mix of emotions she hadn't experienced in a long time. There was a natural patience in Jack as he explained complex concepts to Ethan, a kindness that contrasted with the image of a cold and calculating man she had initially formed. "And you, Sarah, how's the adjustment at the new school going?" Jack asked when Ethan got distracted flipping through a book on sustainable architecture. "Better than I expected, honestly," she replied, twirling a strand of hair around her finger, a gesture Jack was beginning to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "The 4th graders are challenging, but I love what I do. What worries me most is Ethan. He hasn't made any close friends yet." "It does take time. It took me almost a whole year to feel at home when we moved to New York. The problem is that he was always very close to his grandparents in Austin. My dad taught him math every weekend, and my mom always had some craft project for them to do together. Here, it's just the two of us." There was a vulnerability in Sarah's voice that touched something deep in Jack. He recognized that feeling of inadequacy, of feeling like he wasn't offering enough to the child in his care. "Why did you leave Texas?" he asked gently, immediately regretting it when he saw Sarah's expression close off slightly. "Personal reasons. Sometimes changes are necessary to protect those we love," she said, looking at Ethan, who was still engrossed in the book. Jack understood he had touched on a delicate subject and shifted focus. "If you want, I can help Ethan with math. I've always been good with numbers, and I have free time on weekends when Emily is sleeping." Sarah's eyes lit up with genuine gratitude. "Would you do that?" "I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." "Not at all. It would be a pleasure. Besides, I think Emily would enjoy having other people around. She's very social for a child who only lives with me." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the apartment, an unexpectedly intimate atmosphere had formed. The sound of rain against the windows served as a natural soundtrack for conversations that likely wouldn't happen under normal circumstances. "Have you ever been married?" Sarah asked after a few minutes of comfortable silence. Jack hesitated before answering. "I was. Emily's mother. We separated when Emily was 6 months old. She decided she wanted to pursue an artistic career in Paris and felt that motherhood was getting in the way of her plans." "Wow, that sounds tough. It must have been a terrible time for you." "It was complicated. I always thought I had everything planned out, that I knew exactly how my life would be: stable marriage, rising career, traditional family. When she left, I realized I might never have truly understood what she needed." Sarah noticed the implicit guilt in Jack's words and felt an urge to comfort him. Relationships are complex. Sometimes two good people just want different things out of life. "That's what I tell myself, but I still wonder if I could have done something differently." "You're raising a beautiful daughter, working hard, being a present father. That's no small feat, Jack." There was a sincerity in Sarah's voice that reached Jack unexpectedly. It had been a long time since someone recognized his efforts as a father, especially someone who understood the challenges of solo parenting. "And you, Ethan's father?" "I'd prefer not to talk about that today," Sarah gently interrupted, but firmly. "Maybe another time." Jack nodded in understanding. Everyone has the right to their own secrets and traumas. Ethan had fallen asleep on the sofa, still holding the architecture book. Sarah watched him with maternal tenderness before covering him better with the blanket. "He hasn't been sleeping well since we got here," she confessed in a low voice. "I think he's still processing all the changes." "Changes are always hard, especially for kids, but he seems to be a resilient boy." "He is. Sometimes I think he's stronger than I am." Jack watched Sarah carefully adjust Ethan's hair and felt something stir in his chest. There was a natural beauty in her maternal devotion, a silent strength that he admired and envied simultaneously. "Would you like more tea? I can make another," he offered. "That would be great. I don't think I'll be able to sleep with all this rain anyway." As Jack prepared more tea in the kitchen, Sarah walked over to the living room window and watched the storm outside. The lightning intermittently illuminated the neighboring buildings, creating a dramatic and beautiful natural spectacle. "It's impressive how New York looks beautiful during storms," she commented when Jack returned. "True. Sometimes I think the city shows its true personality only during these extreme hours." They remained there side by side at the window, watching nature in its most powerful manifestation. Unbeknownst to them, their shoulders brushed lightly, and neither made a move to pull away. For the first time since they met, Jack and Sarah were discovering that loneliness, that constant companion of both, might not be as inevitable as they had believed. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle when the kitchen clock struck 3:30 in the morning. Ethan was sound asleep on the sofa bed, emitting small, satisfied sounds that only children can make when they feel truly safe. Jack and Sarah stayed awake, sitting at the kitchen island, each lost in thoughts that felt too heavy to carry alone. "Do you always work this late?" Sarah asked, noticing the subtle dark circles under Jack's eyes and the way he massaged his neck as if trying to undo years of accumulated tension. "It depends on the project. We're in a critical phase of construction on the East River. Issues with suppliers, schedule delays, pressure from investors," Jack explained, spinning the ceramic mug of tea between his hands. "Sometimes I think I work too much to avoid thinking about other things." "What kind of other things?" Jack hesitated, as if calibrating how much he could open up to this woman he hardly knew, but who somehow made him feel less isolated from the world. "Whether I'm being a good father, if Lily will grow up resenting my absence, if I should have fought harder to keep Emily here, even knowing she was unhappy." He paused, surprised by his own honesty. Sometimes I look at Lily sleeping and think she deserves more than a father who's always tired and worried about spreadsheets. Sarah instinctively reached out and touched Jack's arm, a simple gesture that carried more comfort than 1,000 words of consolation. Jack, you're raising a 2-year-old on your own while building a career. That's no small feat. Lily smiles when she sees you, calms down in your arms, plays joyfully when she's with you. Children don't lie about what they feel. How can you be so sure about these things? Painful experience, Sarah replied, and her voice carried a bitterness she tried to disguise by taking a sip of tea. I spent a long time living with someone who constantly questioned my decisions as a mother, who made me believe I would never be enough for Ethan. Jack realized they had ventured into territory that Sarah had avoided earlier. He waited in silence, respecting her pace to share or not her own vulnerabilities. Ethan's father, David. He had this ability to make me feel incompetent in everything. At first, it was subtle. Comments about how I prepared meals, about my discipline methods, about how much time I spent working. Then it became more direct. Sarah paused to breathe, and Jack noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she held the mug. He never hit me or Ethan, but he had other forms of control. He controlled our spending, decided where we could go, who we could talk to. He said it was out of love, that he wanted to protect us. It took me years to realize it wasn't protection, it was possession. And did you manage to get out? Get of that situation? With great difficulty. My parents helped me financially to get the apartment here in New York, far enough away so he couldn't easily find us. At least that's what I hoped. The last sentence was spoken almost in a whisper, laden with a fear that Jack couldn't ignore. Sarah, are you telling me he might be looking for you? I don't know. Maybe. David isn't the type of person who accepts being abandoned. The last time we spoke over the phone, he said I was making a mistake, that New York would destroy me, and that I would come back begging him to take me back. Jack felt a wave of indignation that surprised him with its intensity. The idea of someone threatening or intimidating Sarah and Ethan awakened in him a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. Do you have any kind of legal protection, restraining order, something like that? I couldn't prove direct threats. David is smart, always made sure there was no concrete evidence of his behavior. To family and friends, he was always the caring and concerned boyfriend. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping New York below. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, creating yellowish circles that seemed to embrace the city in its nighttime vulnerability. That's why you came here. It wasn't just a job change, Jack concluded. Exactly. The job at the school was just the excuse I needed to justify the escape. She laughed humorlessly. Funny how we can rationalize our survival decisions. Jack moved closer to her at the window, maintaining a respectful distance, but offering his presence as support. You didn't run away, Sarah. You protected your child and yourself. There's a huge difference between those two things. Sometimes I don't feel brave. Sometimes I feel like just a scared woman who dragged her child away from everything he knew because she couldn't solve her own problems. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing what needs to be done even when you're scared. Lily looked at Jack with an expression that mixed surprise and gratitude. There was a solidity in him, a reliability that she had learned not to expect from men after years with David. And you? What haunts you besides the doubts about being a good father? Jack considered the question carefully. The early morning and the unexpected intimacy of the situation had created an atmosphere of confessions, and he felt compelled to be equally honest. Fear of getting involved with someone again and finding out that I'm even worse at relationships than I thought. Emily told me before she left that I was emotionally unavailable, that I turned everything into a project to be managed instead of just living. Do you think she was right? Partially, maybe. I do have this tendency to want to control variables, to plan every detail, but I think she never understood that this is my way of showing care. When I plan, when I organize, it's because I want the people I love to feel safe. Not everyone needs security in the same way, Lily observed gently. Some people prefer adventure, unpredictability. And you? What do you need? Lily thought for a long moment before answering. Honesty, respect. Someone who understands that independence is not rejection, that having my own space doesn't mean I love less. That sounds reasonable. For David it wasn't. He interpreted any need I had for autonomy as a personal betrayal. From Lily's room came a low whimper, not the desperate cry, indicating hunger or discomfort, but the sleepy murmur suggesting a disturbing dream. Jack automatically moved to check on his daughter, and Lily followed him. Lily was restless, moving her little legs under the blanket. Jack picked her up with smooth, practiced movements, gently rocking her until she calmed down. Lily watched the scene with tenderness, noting how naturally he took on the fatherly role, even in a state of semi-wakefulness. "She's beautiful," Lily whispered when Lily fell back asleep. "She took after her mother in beauty, but I hope she took after me in stubbornness," Jack replied softly, placing his daughter back in the crib. When they returned to the living room, they found Ethan still sleeping soundly. The storm had completely passed, leaving only the occasional drip from the gutters and the smell of wet earth coming through the cracks in the windows. "I think I should try to get some sleep," Lily said, looking at the clock. Today, is going to be a long day at school." "Of course. There are clean towels in the bathroom cabinet if you want to take a shower in the morning, and I can make breakfast coffee for you. Jack, you've already done too much for us. We don't need—" "I know you don't need it, but I would like to do it." There was something in the simplicity of the statement that touched Lily deeply. It wasn't the possessive insistence she had learned to fear, but a genuine offer of care without expected reciprocation. "Then I accept. Thank you." Jack prepared a comfortable spot for Lily to sleep on the living room chair, offering extra pillows and blankets. When they finally said goodbye to try for a few hours of rest before dawn, both carried the feeling that something fundamental had changed between them. On that rainy morning in Brooklyn, two adults wounded by past experiences had begun to discover that it might be possible to trust again, to love again, to build something new on the ruins of previous dreams. And for the first time in a long time, loneliness felt like a choice, not an inevitable condemnation. April arrived with the last warmth of the New York summer and a subtle change in the building's routine. Jack and Lily had developed an unofficial morning ritual of meeting in the elevator, exchanging a few words about the day's plans, and briefly sharing the weight of solo parenting responsibilities. Ethan no longer hid behind his mother when he saw Jack, and Lily clapped enthusiastically whenever she heard his deep voice in the hallway. It was on a Thursday, April 18th, that Jack woke up at 5 in the morning to Lily crying differently than usual. It wasn't the cry of hunger or sleepiness, but a sharp and anguished sound that immediately triggered all his fatherly alarms. When he picked her up, he realized she was burning with fever and breathing heavily. "Calm down, my princess. Daddy is here," he murmured. But his voice betrayed his growing concern. Lily was clearly sick, sicker than he had ever seen. Her little body trembled, and she seemed unable to settle comfortably in any position. Jack checked her temperature, 102.6 degrees Fahrenheit. The pediatrician had always advised that a fever above 101.3 in such small children required immediate medical attention. He administered children's fever medicine and tried to soothe Lily with a cool cloth on her forehead, but she continued crying and exhibiting that labored breathing that made him increasingly anxious. At 6 in the morning, he made the decision to take her to the emergency room at Mount Sinai Hospital, the closest and most reliable medical institution he knew. He dressed Lily in light clothes, prepared a bag with diapers, bottles and documents, and was about to leave when he remembered a crucial detail. That same day, at 9:30 a.m., he had a crucial meeting with the investors of the East River project. The construction was facing technical problems with the foundation. The soil had proven to be more unstable than preliminary studies indicated, requiring a complete overhaul of the structural design. Today's meeting would decide whether the investors would cover the additional costs or cancel the entire project. It was the most important meeting of his career. Jack looked at Lily, who continued to cry weakly in his arms, and didn't hesitate for a second. The meeting would have to wait, or be cancelled, or anything else. Nothing in the world was more important than his daughter's health. At the hospital, after 2 hours of anxious waiting in the pediatric emergency room, the diagnosis. Jack confirmed his worst fears: bacterial pneumonia. Lily would need to be hospitalized for intravenous antibiotics and constant respiratory monitoring. "Is it serious, doctor?" Jack asked the on-call pediatrician, a middle-aged man with glasses and a kind expression. "In children this age, we always take pneumonia very seriously, but we diagnosed it early, and she will respond well to treatment. She will probably be hospitalized for 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days. Jack mentally calculated. Besides today's meeting, he had critical commitments at the construction site throughout the week. The schedule was already tight, and his absence could jeopardize the project even further. But looking at Lily, small and fragile in the hospital bed with an oxygen tube, he knew there was no choice to be made. He called his partner Alex, explaining the situation and asking to cancel all meetings for the week. Then he called the secretary, instructing her to reschedule the appointments indefinitely. With each call, he felt a mix of professional guilt and personal certainty. He was doing the right thing, even if it came at a high cost to his career. It was at 11:30 a.m., when he finally settled into the chair beside Lily's bed, that Jack realized he hadn't communicated his absence to anyone else. Sarah was probably wondering why she hadn't seen them in the elevator that morning. He sent a simple message: "Lily is in the hospital with pneumonia. I'll be here for a few days. Thanks for the improvised morning coffees. I hope Ethan has a good day at school." The reply came 15 minutes later. "Oh my God, Jack. How is she? Which hospital? Can I help with anything?" Jack was surprised by the genuine concern in the message. He sent the hospital address and added that everything was under control, just waiting for the medication to take effect. The first day of hospitalization passed slowly. Jack alternated between watching Lily's breathing, talking to nurses, and trying to work on his laptop, reviewing plans and budgets to keep his mind occupied. Lily slept most of the time, waking only to whimper softly or accept small amounts of milk. On the afternoon of the second day, Friday, Jack was dozing in the chair when he heard soft footsteps in the hallway. He opened his eyes and saw Sarah standing in the doorway, holding a plastic bag and looking hesitant, as if she wasn't sure whether to enter. "Hi," she said quietly. "I hope you don't mind the visit. I thought you might need some things." Jack stood up, surprised and inexplicably relieved by her presence. "Sarah, you didn't have to. How did you find out which room?" "I called the reception saying I was family. I brought some fruit, cookies, and—" She hesitated. "A children's book that Ethan wanted to lend to Lily. He said it helped him feel better when he was sick." The kindness of the gesture touched Jack unexpectedly. For 2 days, he had felt completely isolated in the hospital environment, dealing alone with anxiety and exhaustion. The simple presence of Sarah brought a comfort he didn't know he needed. "How is she?" Sarah asked, moving closer to the bed where Lily slept. Even sick, the girl maintained a serene expression, with rosy cheeks and long eyelashes resting on her closed eyelids. "Better today. The fever has gone down, and she managed to have a little soup for lunch. The doctor said we'll probably be discharged on Monday." "What a relief. And you? Are you managing to rest?" Jack laughed tiredly. "Resting in a hospital is a contradiction in terms. But I'm okay." Sarah watched him closely. His disheveled hair, the clothes that clearly had been worn for 2 consecutive days, the deep circles under his eyes. He wasn't okay. He was just functioning in the survival mode that every single parent knows. "Jack, you need to take a shower and eat something proper. Why don't you go home and get organized? I can stay with Lily for a few hours." "I can't ask that of you, Sarah. You have work, you have Ethan." "Ethan is at a friend's house this afternoon, and tomorrow is Saturday. I'm not offering out of obligation. I'm offering because I want to help." Jack hesitated. Accepting help had always been difficult for him, especially when it came to responsibilities with Lily, but the sincerity in Sarah's eyes and his own state of exhaustion made him reconsider. "Are you sure? It's just a few hours, just for me to go home, take a shower, and grab some clean clothes." "I'm absolutely sure. Besides, I need practice for when I have grandchildren," Sarah joked, and they both smiled. Jack quickly passed on the information about the medication schedule and the specific care Lily was receiving. Sarah absorbed every detail with the focused attention of someone who takes responsibilities seriously. "If anything happens, any changes, you call me immediately," Jack instructed, grabbing the car keys. "I promise. Now go, before I change my mind," Sarah joked, settling into the chair beside the bed. During the drive home, Jack felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. It was the first time since Lily's hospitalization that he was leaving the hospital, the first time he was entrusting Lily to someone else's care who wasn't a medical professional. But surprisingly, he didn't feel nervous about leaving his daughter with Sarah. There was a natural competence in her, a familiarity with children that came from experience and maternal instinct. At home, while taking his first hot shower in 2 days, Jack reflected on what had happened over the past few months. Unbeknownst to him, Sarah and Ethan had become part of his life, in a way he hadn't planned or anticipated. And now, when he needed support the most, she was there, offering help without asking anything in return, without asking difficult questions about why he didn't have other family or close friends to rely on. When he returned to the hospital 2 hours later, he found Sarah reading the children's book in a low voice to Lily, who was awake and watching the colorful illustrations with interest. It was a scene of domestic intimacy that made Jack pause at the door for a moment, absorbing the naturalness with which that woman fit into his life and that of his daughter. On that Friday afternoon, in the hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and medications, Jack realized that he was developing feelings for Sarah that went far beyond initial attraction or gratitude for her kindness. He was falling for the way she cared for Lily, as if she were her own daughter, for the generosity with which she offered her time and energy without expecting anything in return. And for the first time since becoming a father, Jack didn't feel completely alone, carrying the weight of parental responsibility. June arrived with the characteristic chill of New York's winter and the typical excitement of school fairs in the local schools. Harmony School, where Sarah taught, had transformed into a volunteer worksite during the afternoons, with parents dedicated to creating the perfect decoration for the event that would take place on the last Saturday of the month. Jack had volunteered to help with the organization after Ethan, during a math study session at his apartment, enthusiastically commented about the fair. The boy had lost his initial shyness and now treated Jack as a mix of private tutor and affectionate uncle, asking questions that ranged from, "Why don't buildings fall?" to, "Do you like my mom?" "Of course I like your mom, Ethan. She's a very special person," Jack had replied on that occasion, surprised by the ease of his response. "Special like a girlfriend or special like a friend?" Ethan insisted, with the direct curiosity of 8-year-olds. Jack had laughed, taken aback by the question. What kind of question is that, kid? "It's just that my mom acts different when she talks about you. She smiles more and plays with her hair." Ethan's observation echoed in Jack's mind as he helped other volunteers set up colorful banners in the schoolyard. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and the smell of sweet popcorn and hot apple cider with nutmeg was already beginning to fill the air. Lily played on the ground with other small children, closely watched by volunteer mothers who had been charmed by her sociable personality. "Jack, can you help me with these lights?" Sarah called from the top of a ladder, trying to hang a string of colored bulbs between 2 trees in the yard. She wore faded jeans and a long-sleeved red shirt that highlighted the slightly golden tone of her skin. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, but a few stubborn strands escaped and framed her face as she focused on the task. "Sure," Jack replied, positioning himself to hold the ladder. "Be careful up there. That ladder doesn't look very stable." "Say that now, after I've already climbed," Sarah laughed, but there was a confidence in her voice that indicated she felt safe with Jack nearby. "If you fall, I'll catch you," he said, and there was something in the simplicity of the statement that made Sarah look down and meet his eyes for a moment longer than necessary. "Is that a promise?" she asked, and although she was joking, there was an underlying seriousness in the question. "It's a promise," Jack confirmed. In the next 3 hours, they worked side by side, organizing the food stalls, testing the sound system, and coordinating the themed decorations. There was a naturalness in how they complemented each other. When Jack focused too much on technical details, Sarah reminded him of the importance of the visual aspect. When she worried excessively about everyone's satisfaction, he reassured her with practical solutions. "You two work well together," commented Mrs. Smith, the school's educational coordinator, a 60-year-old woman with grey hair and sharp eyes. "You seem like a real couple." Sarah blushed slightly. "Mrs. Smith, we're just friends helping each other," Jack quickly completed, but there was a hesitation in the response that didn't go unnoticed by the experienced coordinator. "Oh yes, friends," Mrs. Smith said with a knowing smile. "Those kinds of friends who look at each other like they're the most important thing in the world." The observation created a momentary silence between Jack and Sarah, broken only when Ethan came running up, followed by a group of schoolmates. "Mom, Mom, can Jack eat corn with us at the fair? And Lily too?" Ethan asked, breathless with excitement. "Of course, my love, if they want to," Sarah replied, noticing how Ethan had naturally included Jack and Lily in his social plans. "I'd love to, Ethan. It's been a while since I had some good roasted corn," Jack said, crouching down to be at the boys' level. "And you, are you going to introduce Lily to your friends?" "I already did. Everyone thought she was really cute. Carla said she wanted a little sister just like Lily." The word "little sister" hung in the air, and Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. Ethan had started referring to Lily this way in recent weeks, creating in his childlike mind a family structure that reality had yet to support. The official fair began at 6 p.m. when the schoolyard filled with families, children running between the stalls, and the sound of folk music playing on the makeshift sound system. Jack circulated with Lily in his arms, introducing her to other parents as if it were the most natural social event in the world. Sarah watched from a distance, impressed by his ease in adapting to the community environment. "Your husband is very nice," commented one of Ethan's classmates' mothers, approaching Sarah at the hot apple cider stall. He's not my husband, Sarah corrected automatically. We're neighbors. Oh, sorry. It's just that you seemed so comfortable together that I assumed, and the way he takes care of Lily and Ethan is very affectionate. Sarah looked in the direction where Jack was teaching Ethan and a group of children how to make origami with colorful napkins, while Lily tried to imitate the older kids' movements. There was something familiar about the scene, a harmony she hadn't consciously noticed before. Around 8 p.m., as the school fair reached its peak with the children's square dance performances, Ethan pulled Jack and Sarah to join in the group dance. In the middle of the decorated yard, following the lively commands of the host, they found themselves dancing together, laughing at Ethan's frustrated attempts to coordinate the complex steps. "Swing!" shouted the host, and Jack held Sarah's hands, spinning her gently, while Lily, in his arms, giggled with delight. "You dance well for an engineer," Sarah teased, breathless from the dancing and laughter. "Mandatory classes in school. My mom insisted that every gentleman should know how to dance," Jack replied, and for the first time, Sarah noticed he rarely spoke about his family. "Where are your parents now?" "They died in a car accident when I was in college. It was just the three of us." The information hit Sarah like a punch to the stomach. Jack had built not only his professional life, but his entire adult existence without the family support network that she, despite all the complications, still had in Texas. "Jack, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago. It's been 14 years. But Sarah realized that the pain hadn't completely disappeared. It had just been carefully organized and filed away, like everything in Jack's life. She understood better now his need for control, his difficulty in accepting help, his obsessive dedication to work. The square dance ended with everyone applauding and the children running to their families. Ethan hugged Sarah first, then Jack, and finally Lily, as if he were officially sealing the group's unity. "That was the best school fair of my life," he declared, with the dramatic sincerity of children. "Why was it the best?" Sarah asked, crouching down to talk to her son at eye level. "Because for the first time, I had a complete family to dance with me," Ethan replied simply. The comment created an emotional silence among the adults. Jack felt something stir in his chest, a mix of tenderness, responsibility, and something deeper that he wasn't ready to name yet. On the way home, with Ethan holding both the adults' hands and Lily sleeping in Jack's car, Sarah finally verbalized what she had been feeling for weeks. "Jack, we need to talk about what's happening between us." "I know," he replied, his voice carrying the same seriousness. "I've been thinking about it too. Ethan is getting his hopes up, and I am too." Jack stopped walking and turned to look at Sarah. In the yellow light of the street lamps in Brooklyn, she looked even more beautiful, but also more vulnerable. "What are your expectations, Sarah?" "I don't know yet. I know I like being with you, that I trust you with my son, that you make me feel safe in a way I had forgotten was possible." She paused, taking a deep breath. "But I also know that I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Of getting involved and finding out that I don't know how to love someone without losing myself. Of opening my heart and Ethan's to someone who might decide they don't want the complications that come with us." Jack stepped closer, extending his free hand to gently touch Sarah's face. "And I'm afraid of getting involved and finding out that I'm as inadequate for relationships as Emily said I was. I'm afraid I won't be able to balance work, fatherhood, and a relationship without compromising any of those parts." They stood like that for a moment, mutually acknowledging their vulnerabilities under the starry sky of New York. "So, what do we do?" Sarah asked. Maybe we can try to figure it out together, Jack suggested. No rush, no pressure, just seeing where it leads us. Ethan, who had been observing the serious conversation with the limited patience of children, interrupted the moment. Are you going to keep dating like that, or are we going to get ice cream to celebrate the fair? Jack and Sarah looked at the boy and burst into laughter, breaking the tension of the moment. Ice cream sounds like a great idea, Jack agreed. And so, on a school fair night in Brooklyn, with the smell of sweet popcorn in the air and the promise of significant changes on the horizon, two people began to seriously consider the possibility that maybe they didn't have to carry the weight of their responsibilities and dreams alone. July arrived with that typical dry cold of New York winters, and with it came a series of complications that Jack had never anticipated. The first sign of trouble appeared on a Tuesday morning when he received a call from Alex, his partner in the construction company, with the tense voice of someone bearing bad news. Jack, we need to talk urgently. The structural engineers found serious problems with the foundation of the East River project. More serious than we thought. Jack was having morning coffee with Lily, who was trying to eat pieces of banana with her own hands, spreading more food on the high chair than she was getting into her mouth. The calm morning routine was immediately replaced by the familiar adrenaline of professional problems. What kind of problems? He asked, already mentally calculating the worst-case scenarios. The subsoil has a layer of unstable clay that didn't show up in the preliminary surveys. We'll need to resize the entire foundation system. We're talking about a cost increase of at least 40%. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of professional responsibility settle on his shoulders. A 40% increase meant renegotiating the entire contract with investors, possibly losing the whole project, and definitely compromising the reputation of the construction company he had spent years building. Emergency meeting today at 2 p.m. with everyone involved, Alex said. We need quick solutions, or the project is going down the drain. After Jack sat at the kitchen table, watching Lily play joyfully with pieces of banana, the child had no idea of the problems piling up around her, and for a moment he envied her innocence. In recent months, with the constant presence of Sarah and Ethan in their lives, he had begun to slightly relax his obsessive control over every aspect of his existence. Now, the harsh reality of his professional life brutally reminded him that relaxing his vigilance had consequences. The phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number with a New York area code. "Hello," Jack answered, sensing more complications. "Jack, it's me, Emily." His ex-wife's voice hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. Emily hadn't reached out in over 6 months, since a brief call on Lily's second birthday. Hearing her voice again brought back memories he had carefully filed away. "Emily, what? How are you?" "I'm fine. Look, I know it's going to sound strange for me to call out of the blue like this, but need to talk to you about some important things." Jack picked up Lily and headed to the living room, trying to process the unexpected call while keeping his attention on his daughter. "What kind of things?" "I'm thinking about moving back to the States. Things here in Paris haven't exactly gone as I planned, and, well, I've missed Lily, and maybe you too." Jack's world seemed to slightly tilt. Emily considering coming back was a variable he had never included in his careful plans for the future. "Emily, what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I made a mistake, that maybe I gave up on our family too quickly. I would like to talk about the possibility of trying again." Jack looked at Lily, who was watching her father with curiosity, as if sensing the tension in the conversation even without understanding the words. "This is very sudden, Emily. You left 2 years ago saying that motherhood was stifling your artistic dreams. I know what I said, and I know I was unfair to you and to Lily. But people change, Jack. They mature. I've learned a lot about myself here in Paris, and one of the things I've learned is that a career isn't everything in life. The irony of the statement did not go unnoticed by Jack. At the very moment his own career was facing its biggest crisis in years, Emily was questioning the importance of professional achievements. "And what do you expect me to do with this information?" "To think about the possibility, not to close the door on the idea of rebuilding our family. Lily needs her mother, Jack." "Lily has been doing very well, thank you," Jack replied, and there was a defensiveness in his voice that surprised even him. "She's healthy, happy, developing. Perfectly. I'm sure you're a wonderful father. I always knew you would be, but she needs a maternal figure too." The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, with Emily explaining that she would be returning to the States in a few weeks to get to know her daughter better and evaluate future possibilities. Jack ended the call with a feeling that his carefully organized life was about to be turned upside down again. It was in this troubled mental state that he encountered Sarah in the elevator, returning from her work at the school. She immediately noticed something different in his expression. "Are you okay? You look worried," she said, while Lily reached out her little arms toward her as she had grown accustomed to doing. "Just some issues at work," Jack replied, not completely lying, but omitting Emily's call. He wasn't ready to share that complication, especially when he still didn't know how to process it. "Is there anything I can help with?" Sarah's simple question touched Jack unexpectedly. In recent months, he had grown accustomed to her support, to the feeling of having someone genuinely concerned for his well-being. The idea of losing that, of returning to his previous solitude, caused him an anxiety he hadn't expected to feel. "Actually, yes," he said impulsively. "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight? I can cook something, and Ethan can play with Lily." Sarah smiled, but there was a concern in her eyes. "Sure. How about I bring dessert?" That night, while they prepared a simple dinner together in Jack's kitchen, he felt momentarily isolated from the problems piling up. Sarah was telling funny stories about her students at school. Ethan was helping Lily stack colorful blocks in the living room, and for a few moments, life seemed to have the domestic normalcy that Jack had imagined years before, when he still believed in guaranteed, happy endings. "Jack," Sarah said during dessert, "I have something to tell you too." Her serious tone immediately alerted all of Jack's instincts. "What is it?" "I received a job offer. A private school on the Upper East Side is offering a position in educational coordination. The salary would be almost 3 times what I earn at the public school." Jack felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. That's great, Sarah. Quite an opportunity." "Yes, but it would also mean moving away from Brooklyn. The school is far and it would be more practical to live nearby." "Have you decided yet?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "I'm still thinking. There are many factors to consider." She looked significantly at Jack, and he understood that he was one of those factors. The realization should have made him happy, but at that moment, it only increased the pressure he felt from all directions. After Sarah and Ethan went home, Jack stayed in the living room watching Lily play on the rug, trying to mentally organize all the variables he had received in. A single day, Emily considering coming back and rebuilding the family, the serious problems at work that could destroy his career, the possibility of Sarah moving away. For the first time in months, Jack felt completely overwhelmed by the complexity of his life, the temptation to retreat into the obsessive routine of work, to emotionally shut down and deal with. The problems through the absolute control of variables were almost irresistible. Perhaps Emily was right. Perhaps Lily really needed a more traditional family structure, with her biological mother present. Maybe he was being selfish by building a new life with Sarah, when the old life still had unresolved issues, or maybe he was just afraid that everything he had worked for in the last few months, the connection with Sarah, the fatherly relationship he had developed with Ethan, the possibility of a reconstructed family, could collapse as easily as it had formed. That night, Jack fell asleep with Lily in his lap, both on the living room sofa, surrounded by scattered toys and the feeling that inevitable changes were approaching, whether he wanted them or not. And for the first time since he had met Sarah, loneliness no longer felt like a choice, but a real and frightening possibility. August arrived dry and cold, bringing with it an air of tension that seemed to have settled permanently in Jack's life. The crisis in the East River project had intensified throughout July, forcing him to work 12 to 14-hour shifts to find technical solutions that would allow the continuation of the work without completely blowing the budget. The solution he finally developed involved an innovative micropile technique he had studied years earlier in a project in Europe, but had never had the opportunity to implement. It was risky, expensive, but potentially revolutionary for construction on unstable soils. The investors had agreed to give him 4 more weeks to prove the feasibility of the proposal. Just when Jack began to see light at the end of the professional tunnel, Sarah's personal life was violently turned upside down. On the first Monday of August, Jack was leaving for work when he heard raised voices in the hallway. Through the slightly open door, he saw Sarah standing in front of the elevator, clearly tense, talking to a man he did not recognize. The man was tall, dark-haired, wearing a blue dress shirt and jeans, and there was something about his posture, too close to Sarah, invading her personal space, that immediately alerted Jack's instincts. Sarah's body language was completely defensive, arms crossed, body slightly leaning back, closed expression. "Sarah, you're being irrational. New York is not a place to raise a child, especially alone. You know that," the man said in a voice that carried forced authority. "David, we've talked about this. My decision is made." "I'm not going back," Sarah replied, and Jack could see the effort she was making to keep her voice steady. David, the possessive ex-partner Sarah had mentioned on the night of the storm. Jack felt an immediate wave of tension rise up his spine. "And Ethan? He needs stability, a present father figure. Here you're depriving him of a complete family." "Ethan is doing just fine, thank you. He has adjusted, made friends, is doing well in school." "Doing well in school, or are you convincing yourself of that? I spoke with your parents yesterday, Sarah. They agree with me that this change was hasty." Jack saw Sarah waver slightly, and the mention of her parents as David's allies clearly hit her where it hurt the most. That's when David noticed Jack's presence in the open door. "And who might you be?" he asked with a tone that mixed curiosity and challenge. "Jack Thompson, neighbor," Jack replied, stepping completely out of the apartment and closing the door behind him. There was something about David's presence that activated all of Jack's protective instincts. "Ah, the helpful neighbor," David said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sarah told me about you. Very kind of you to look after her and Ethan." The way David pronounced "look after" made it clear that he did not consider it a relationship of equals, but a kind of temporary charity. "I don't look after anyone," Jack replied calmly. "We're friends who support each other." "Friends," David repeated as if testing the word. "Good to know that Sarah made friends in New York. It's important to have support when you're away from your real family." The elevator arrived, and David headed toward it as if the conversation was over. "Sarah, I'll be in New York for a few days. I'll be staying at a hotel near Ethan's school. We can talk later when you've thought more about all this." After the elevator doors closed, Jack and Sarah remained in the hallway in silence. She was visibly shaken, her hands trembling slightly as she searched for her keys in her bag. "Are you okay?" Jack asked gently. "Not really," Sarah admitted, her voice coming out quieter than usual. I don't know how he found out where I live. I was very careful not to leave any traces. Do you want to talk about it? Sarah looked at Jack for a long moment, as if assessing how much she could trust him. Not here in the hallway. If you have time. I have time, Jackie said immediately, even knowing he would be late to the construction site. In Sarah's apartment, while she prepared coffee with still, trembling hands, Jack observed the environment that had become familiar over the past few months. It was smaller than his, decorated in warm colors and filled with objects that told stories. Photos of Ethan at various ages, well-tended plants, pedagogy books mixed with novels, children's drawings stuck to the fridge. He showed up yesterday at the school gate, Sarah began, sitting at the kitchen table. In front of my classmates, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He said he was in New York for work and wanted to surprise me. How did he find out where you work? Probably through my parents. They never understood why I broke up with David. To them, he was always the perfect son-in-law, financially successful, educated, from a traditional family. Jack noticed the bitterness in her voice when she spoke of her family. And they don't know about the problems you two had. They know superficially. But David had always been very careful to maintain appearances. In front of family, he was the attentive and loving boyfriend. The controlling behaviors happened when we were alone. What kind of behaviors? Sarah hesitated before continuing, as if it still pained her to verbalize certain memories. It started with small criticisms, the way I dressed, how I raised Ethan, how I spent money. Then it evolved into more direct control. He wanted to know where I was at all times, who I was talking to, what websites I visited online. And you never sought help? I thought about it several times, but he had an incredible ability to convince me that I was overreacting, that it was genuine love and concern, and when I questioned him, he would get hurt, saying that I didn't appreciate his care. Jack recognized the pattern that Sarah described. He had read about abusive relationships after learning about cases from clients of the construction company who had gone through similar situations. And now he wants you back. He says he has matured, that he understands the mistakes he made. He promises that he will be different. Sarah laughed without humor. It's exactly the same conversation we had when we tried to get back together for the last time, 2 years ago. Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the screen, and her face went pale. It's him. Don't answer, Jack suggested, but Sarah had already pressed the button to accept the call. Hello? Sarah, I need to talk to Ethan. He's been my stepson for 6 years. I have the right to keep in touch. Jack could hear David's voice through the phone, and there was a pressure in the way he spoke that confirmed all suspicions. Ethan is at school, David. And no, you have no legal rights over him. Legal rights maybe not, but moral rights, yes. I helped raise him since he was 2. Since he considers me a father. He considered. Things have changed. They only changed because you filled his head with lies about me. Let me talk to him, Sarah. Let me explain my side of the story. I won't do that. Then I will have to find other ways to talk to him. The school is public. Anyone can enter at dismissal time. The veiled threat was clear to everyone on the call. Sarah looked at Jack with panic in her eyes. David, you can't. I can, and I will. I'm a free man, Sarah. I can go where I want. Talk to whom I want, including Ethan. Jack gestured for Sarah to hang up and extended his hand, asking for the phone. She hesitated for a moment, then handed over the device. David, this is Jack, the neighbor. Ah, the protective gentleman, what do you want? I want you to understand that you are bothering Sarah and Ethan. They don't want contact with you. Respect that. And who are you to speak for them? The replacement boyfriend? Jack felt the provocation, but kept his voice calm. I'm someone who cares about their well-being. Well-being? Do you think tearing a child away from his family, from the grandparents he loves, from the friends he grew up with is well-being? You don't know the whole story, Jack. I know enough. I doubt it. But fine, I will clarify things personally with Ethan. Today, at dismissal time. And the call ended. Sarah was visibly panicked. He's going after Ethan at school. He's going to confuse my son's head with lies and manipulations. He won't, Jack said with a determination that surprised even himself. You will pick Ethan up early today and we will sort this out. How? First, by documenting everything, then seeking legal help. And if necessary. Jack paused. Taking more direct measures to protect you both. For the first time since David had appeared, Sarah felt a spark of hope. She was not alone in this battle. She had someone willing to face her past alongside her. But they both knew that the fight was just beginning. That afternoon unfolded like a carefully planned military operation. Jack cancelled all his afternoon meetings and joined Sarah at Ethan's school 2 hours before the normal dismissal time. They met at the main gate of Harmony School, where she quickly spoke with the coordinator, Mrs. Smith, about the situation. I have 40 years of teaching experience, my dear. I've seen it all in this life, the coordinator said, with the practical wisdom of someone who had dealt with countless family crises. This type of man doesn't give up easily. I will instruct the gate staff not to allow him in, but I can't prevent him from standing on the sidewalk in front of the school. Ethan was called to leave early under the pretense of a doctor's appointment. On the way home, Sarah carefully explained the situation to her son, wanting to alert him, without traumatizing him. Do you remember David, my love? From Austin. Ethan, who had been excitedly talking about a science project he was working on, immediately changed his expression. Is he here? He's visiting New York and wants to talk to you, but you're not obligated to speak with him if you don't want to. I don't want to, Ethan said immediately, and there was a firmness in the voice of the 8-year-old that broke Sarah's heart. He's really annoying and keeps saying that you don't know how to take care of me properly. Jack, who had remained silent during the conversation, crouched down to Ethan's level when they reached the building. Ethan, if David shows up and tries to talk to you, what will you do? I'll run away from him and shout for help, Ethan replied with the seriousness of someone who had mentally rehearsed this situation many times. Very good, and if he says your mom sent him to pick you up? I'll know that's a lie because my mom always picks me up personally or sends someone I know. The conversation was interrupted when they exited the elevator and found David waiting in the hallway on the 3rd floor, leaning against the wall between apartments 301 and 302. He was wearing the same. Ethan was wearing his morning clothes, but there was something different about his posture, a controlled tension that Jack immediately identified as dangerous. Hi, Ethan, said David with a smile that seemed forced. You've grown so much. I missed you. Ethan hid behind Sarah, gripping her hand tightly. Hi, David, he murmured without enthusiasm. David, what are you doing here? Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. How did you get into the building? A kind lady was leaving and let me in. When I told her I was your boyfriend coming to surprise you, David replied, his smile becoming more unpleasant. People in New York are very hospitable. Jack positioned himself slightly in front of Sarah and Ethan, creating a subtle but clear physical barrier. You're trespassing, David. You need to leave. Trespassing? I'm just visiting my family, David said, and for the first time his mask of civility began to slip. Ethan, come here. I want to talk to you. Ethan shrank even further behind his mother. I don't want to, he said quietly. Don't be rude, Ethan. I taught you about respecting your elders. Come say hello to your stepdad properly. He's not your stepdad, Jack said firmly, and he said he doesn't want to talk. Respect that. David looked at Jack with an expression that mixed disdain and something darker. "You're getting involved in a situation you don't understand, Jack. This is a family matter that doesn't concern you." "It does concern me because they are important to me," Jack replied, and there was a calmness in his voice that contrasted with David's rising tension. "Important to you?" David laughed, but the sound had no humor. "You think you know Sarah? Do you know what kind of mother she is? Do you know how many times she left Ethan alone to go out with her friends? How many times I had to pick the boy up from school because she forgot?" "That's not true," Sarah exclaimed, but Jack noticed that the accusations had hit her hard. "Not true? Ethan, tell your new friend about that time your mum left you at the neighbor's for 3 days because she wanted to travel with her friends to Austin." Ethan looked confused between the adults. "But you said she could go. You said she would take care of me." "I said that because I didn't want you to see that your mom was being selfish, Ethan. I always protected you from the truth about her." Jack saw Sarah pale at the cruel manipulation David was performing in front of the child, rewriting history to paint himself as the savior and her as the villain. "Enough," Jack said, and his voice carried an authority that made David stop talking. "This conversation is over. You will leave now, or I will call building security. Or what? You think you can make me leave? I'd like to see you try." It was at that moment that the door to apartment 304 opened, and Mrs. Johnson, a 70-year-old woman who had lived there for decades, appeared in the hallway. "What's all this noise? You're disturbing all the neighbors," she said, observing the scene with the natural authority of someone who had raised 6 children. David immediately changed his posture, reverting to his mask of civility. "Sorry for the disturbance, ma'am. I'm just visiting my family." "Family nothing," Mrs. Johnson said firmly. "I know the family of this lady and this boy. You are not family. It's disturbing." The unexpected intervention from Mrs. Johnson broke the tension of the moment and gave Jack an idea. "David, you have 2 options. Leave voluntarily now, or I document this trespassing and the police will receive a report for disturbing the peace and trespassing." Jack took his phone out of his pocket and began to record. "Today, August 8th, 5:45 p.m. David—" He paused, realizing he didn't know the last name. "David Smith," Sarah automatically completed. "David Smith is trespassing at the residential building on Maple Street, 187, Brooklyn, intimidating Sarah Johnson and her minor son, Ethan Johnson, after being asked multiple times to leave." The presence of the camera completely changed the dynamics of the situation. David realized he had lost control of the narrative. "This is ridiculous. I just wanted to talk to Ethan." "And he said he doesn't want to talk," Jack replied, continuing to record. "You have the right to visit New York, but you do not have the right to intimidate a woman and a child who have made it clear they do not want your presence." David looked around, noticing that there were other doors slightly open in the hallway, curious neighbors watching the situation. His strategy of private intimidation had turned into a public spectacle. "Fine," he finally said, straightening his shirt. "Sarah, this conversation is not over. Let's resolve this civilly, like responsible adults." "The conversation is over," Sarah said, finding her voice again. "And there's nothing to resolve. My decision is final." David headed to the elevator, but before entering, he turned to Jack. "You have no idea what you're getting into, but you'll find out." After the elevator descended, Sarah collapsed against the hallway wall, trembling. Ethan ran to hug her, and Jack wrapped them both in a protective embrace. "It's over," Jack murmured. "He's gone. For now," Sarah said in a muffled voice. "He won't give up. David never gives up." Mrs. Johnson, who had observed everything, approached. "My daughter, If that man shows up here again, you let me know immediately. I have friends in the police who do not tolerate this kind of behavior." That night, Sarah and Ethan had dinner at Jack's apartment. Lily was particularly affectionate, as if sensing that Ethan needed extra attention, and insisted on sharing her toys with him. The adults spoke quietly about the next steps, protective measures, changing, the locks altering Ethan's school routine. "Jack," Sarah said as they were putting the children to bed, "thank you for today, for not letting me face this alone." "There's no need to thank me. It was instinctive." "It wasn't instinctive. It was a choice, a brave choice." Jack looked into her eyes, seeing a vulnerability she rarely showed and a gratitude that went beyond words. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you too," he said, recalling the call from Emily that he hadn't shared yet. "Emily called. She's thinking about coming back from Brazil." Sarah felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet, but I think you deserve to know that there are complications in my life too." They remained seated on the sofa bed, side by side, each processing the challenges that the near future might bring. Outside, New York continued its bustling nightlife, indifferent to the personal dramas unfolding in the apartments of Brooklyn. But inside apartment 301, two people who had learned to trust each other were beginning to realize that perhaps love wasn't enough to resolve all the complications that the past insisted on bringing into the present. December arrived in New York, bringing the humid warmth that heralds summer and a sense of renewal that seemed to echo in the lives of everyone involved in the story that had begun with a simple request for sugar on a February morning. The year had been an emotional roller coaster for Jack, Sarah, and the kids, but the last few months had brought resolutions none of them had dared to hope for. The first major change came in September, when the restraining order against David was finally granted by the court. The process, which Sarah had initiated, with the legal support recommended by Mrs. Johnson, culminated in a hearing where the evidence of his obsessive behavior, including the video recorded by Jack in the hallway, was sufficient to convince the judge of the need for legal protection. The defendant is prohibited from approaching the plaintiff and her minor child within a distance of 500 meters, as well as from making contact by any means of communication, the court officer read, and Sarah felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. David tried to contest the decision, but his own lawyers advised him to accept the agreement and return permanently to Austin. Sarah's family, finally confronted with concrete evidence of the abusive behavior they had minimized for years, apologized and offered full support for their daughter's decision to rebuild her life in New York. The second major relief came in October when Jack's innovative solution to the foundation problems at the East River construction site not only worked perfectly, but also caught the attention of the civil engineering community nationwide. The micropile technique he adapted was documented and later licensed to other construction companies, establishing Jack as a national reference in solutions for unstable soils. "You saved not just this project, but possibly revolutionized the way we handle construction on problematic land," said Alexandra during the grand opening of the business complex in November. "The next 5 years of work are already guaranteed just from the contracts that emerged from this innovation." But it was the third resolution that most impacted Jack's life, the meeting with Emily in November. She had returned to Brazil as promised, but not in the way Jack had imagined. The woman who sought him out at the construction office was different from the Emily who had left 2 years earlier, thinner, with a melancholy in her eyes that contrasted with the artistic energy that had always characterized her. "Paris wasn't what I expected," she admitted during a tense coffee at a bakery in Brooklyn. "And I wasn't the person I thought I was." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I spent 2 years chasing a dream that maybe was never really mine, Maybe it was just fear of growing up, of taking on adult responsibilities. Jack listened without judgment, recognizing in Emily's painful honesty the echo of his own discoveries about himself in recent months. "I came to talk to you because I want to see Lily, to get to know her properly, but also because I need to apologize for the way I left. It wasn't fair to you or to her." "Emily, let me finish," she gently interrupted. "I also came to tell you that I don't want to interfere with the life you've built. I heard about Sarah and Ethan. My parents told me that you seem genuinely happy." The conversation continued for 2 hours, during which they could finally have the honest conversation that should have happened before the separation. Emily admitted that she had never truly wanted motherhood, that she had married Jack more out of social pressure than genuine love, and that the 2 years in Paris had helped her accept that some people are simply not made for traditional family life. "I want to be Lily's aunt, not her mother. I want to be able to visit her, send gifts, watch her grow, but I don't want the daily responsibility of motherhood. That's not a character flaw, Jack. It's self-awareness." The meeting between Emily and Lily took place the following week at Jack's apartment, with Sarah present at his suggestion. It was a strange but necessary afternoon, during which Lily, now almost 3 years old, played naturally with the woman who had given her life, without showing the emotional attachment that should theoretically exist between mother and daughter. "She's beautiful, Jack, and clearly happy," said Emily, watching Lily play in Sarah's lap with the familiarity of someone who had found her true maternal figure. Before leaving for New York permanently, she had decided to accept a job at an art gallery in the capital. Emily officially signed over full custody of Lily to Jack, legally freeing him to make all decisions about their daughter's future. "She has a mother," Emily said, looking at Sarah, "a real mother who chose her out of love, not biology." In this context of resolutions and new beginnings, Jack finally found the courage to make the decision he had been postponing for months. On Christmas Eve, with Lily sleeping in the bedroom and Ethan spending the weekend at a friend's house, Jack prepared a special dinner in apartment 301. "What are we celebrating?" Sarah asked, noticing the lit candles and the special care taken with the decorations. "1 year," Jack replied. "It's exactly 1 year since you knocked on my door asking for sugar." Sarah smiled, recalling that early morning that had completely changed the course of their lives. "It feels like an eternity and yesterday at the same time." "Sarah," Jack said, taking her hands during dessert, "I need to ask you an important question." She noticed the seriousness in his tone and felt her heart race. "What question?" "Would you marry me?" The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity to Jack. Sarah looked at him with a mix of surprise, emotion, and something he couldn't decipher. "Jack, I know it may seem rushed, but it's not. I've thought a lot about this. I want to build an official family with you and Ethan. I want Lily to have an official mother who loves her unconditionally. I want Ethan to have an official father who protects him and supports all his dreams." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. "And what do you want for yourself, Jack?" "I want to wake up every day knowing I'm not alone carrying the weight of life. I want someone who challenges me when I'm being too obsessive, who calms me when I'm being too anxious, who reminds me that work is important but family is essential. Jack, I want you, Sarah, not as a solution to my problems, but as a partner for my dreams, not because I need help taking care of Lily, but because I want you to be officially her mother. Not because Ethan needs a father figure, but because I want to officially be his dad." Sarah got up from the table and walked to the window, looking at the lights of Brooklyn shining below. Jack followed her, respecting her space but offering his presence. "Are you sure?" she finally asked. "Sure that this isn't gratitude or convenience or fear of being alone? I'm sure that I love you, Jack replied simply. "I love your strength. I love your vulnerability. I love how you care for people. I love how you make Lily laugh. I love how Ethan trusts you completely. I love how you made me discover that I can be a father and a partner at the same time." Sarah turned to face him, and Jack saw in her eyes the reflection of his own feelings. "I love you too," she said. "I love how you protected Ethan and me when we needed it. I love how you care for Lily with such dedication. I love how you let me be independent without making me feel rejected. I love how you transformed our loneliness into companionship." So yes, Sarah said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I accept your proposal." The kiss that followed was different from all the others they had exchanged throughout the year. It was not just passion or affection. It was a promise to build something stronger than their individual wounds, more solid than their personal insecurities, more enduring than the circumstances that had brought them together. The next day, Christmas 2025, they shared the news with Ethan, who received the information with an explosive joy that confirmed what everyone already knew. This family had formed naturally long before the official marriage proposal. The wedding took place in March 2026, in an intimate ceremony at the Museum of American History, with the presence of Sarah's parents, who came from Texas, apologizing and offering blessings, school friends, construction partners, and neighbors from the building who had witnessed the evolution of their relationship. Lily, as the flower girl at almost 3 years old, scattered jasmine petals along the aisle, while Ethan, proudly acting as the ring-bearer, carried the rings with the seriousness of someone who understood the importance of the moment. During the exchange of vows, Jack promised, "I promise to be the father Ethan deserves and the partner you chose. I promise that our family will be built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love." Sarah replied, "I promise to be the mother Lily needs and the partner you desire. I promise that our family will be a safe place where everyone can be vulnerable and strong at the same time." 2 years later, at the same time of year when everything had begun, Sarah was once again in a kitchen at 3 a.m. But this time, she didn't need to borrow sugar. She was preparing a surprise birthday cake for Jack, with the enthusiastic help of Ethan, now 10 years old, and Lily, almost 5. "Mom," Ethan said, naturally using the title Sarah had earned, not by biology, but by choice and love, "do you think Jack will like the chocolate cake?" "He'll love it," Sarah replied, watching Lily try to lick the raw batter when no one was looking. "He always loves everything we make, with care." "Just like I love you?" Lily asked with the simplicity of children who grew up knowing they were unconditionally loved. "Just like we all love each other," Sarah confirmed, hugging both children simultaneously. From the bedroom came Jack's sleepy voice. "What are you all up to in the kitchen?" "Nothing!" the three shouted in chorus, bursting into laughter that echoed throughout the apartment, now renovated and expanded to officially accommodate the family of 4 that had been born from a casual encounter on a winter morning. Outside, Brooklyn continued its bustling nightlife. But inside apartment 301, a family built on the ruins of broken dreams, discovered daily that true love is not the one that comes ready and perfect, but the one that is consciously built day after day, choice after choice, with the patience to understand, the courage to forgive, and the wisdom to grow together. And when the alarm clock rang a few hours later, announcing another day in the life of the Thompson-Johnson family, the first sound that filled the apartment was not the cries of children or the alarms of responsibility, but the collective laughter of 4 people who had learned that happiness is not the absence of problems, but the certainty that whatever the challenge, it will not be faced alone.